Good afternoon, you beautiful people, and thank you for joining me in my home studio. I'm Ben Crow from Crimson Guitars, and we're going to have some fun today. I am very excited to be getting started finally with my invitational entry into the Great Guitar Build-Off. I have a strange mind. I've been thinking about this for about 6 months. I'm easily led, so every guitar I pick up I think, oh, let's do a Jaguar, let's do an Acoustasonic style, let's make something Les Paul-y. When it actually comes down to the day, all of that is out the window, and I default to something I've been wanting to do for a number of years now. A guitar build inspired by my love of watches and horology and watchmaking. A lot of what makes me tick, a lot of what makes me enjoy what I do is finding inspiration in places that a lot of people don't and applying it. A lot of guitar builders will look at something from Gibson or the latest thing from Fender, and you're sitting there scrolling Instagram going, oh my gosh, that's genius, oh my gosh, that's genius, and you get 40 or 50 ideas, and it's stuff that people have made. And those people, the ones with the unique ideas, are either absolutely blessed or they're looking for inspiration elsewhere, be it pottery or watchmaking or silversmiths. There are few things that are not applicable to a guitar build if you try hard enough. And that's where we're at today. So what I'm going to be doing is putting down the designs, putting down the general idea of what I'm going to do. Should we get started? I'm doing a lot of videos, as you guys are seeing, looking at vintage guitars, predominantly 1960s or thereabouts. A lot of these guitars are not built to, you might say, the same standards, but the same expectations of solidity, shall we say. Yeah, this is going to be fun, actually. I bought a Hohner London for the Guitar Museum that we are setting up at Crimson headquarters. Hold on, let me get this guitar and we'll have a look at this. Lovely case. So this is a Hohner London Kingsway, and we've got original tailpiece, simple bridge, simple top mounted pickup. But the reason why we're talking about it today is the construction. It's essentially, I think, a plywood or something like that. It's entirely hollow, I think, and incredibly basic, but it sounds amazing. It doesn't need to be anything special. But the reason I've brought this up is the construction method that I've got planned for the GGBO guitar is also non-standard. What I had planned for the watch build was to put every single idea I have ever had about a watch-inspired build in one guitar. And the realization that I've had is that, to be honest, every single build I do has an inspiration from me looking at watches. And I'm not necessarily talking about, you know, a standard thing from Omega or Rolex or Oris or any of these brands. I'm often looking at the utterly unobtainable from Grubel Forsey, where a watch is $1 million. The use of texture and light and shade, and you don't need to have the watch, just have photographs of them on your wall. They are so beautiful. And if I can get that same idea in a guitar, then I'm happy. And the reason why my watch-inspired build, which has long been promised, hasn't occurred is because I haven't been ready to do that. I assumed that I would need access to all the laser cutters and CNC machines and staff at headquarters, bar none, to achieve this. In reality, I'm going to do the whole thing by hand. My temptation is actually to use a very standard, very recognizable shape. After all, this guitar is going to be available via raffle, raising money for Great Guitar Build-Off. thus helping get tools and guitar building courses and the like in the hands of people who can't afford to get into this fantastic hobby. And it's all well and good me going completely off-piste and really going crazy, as if the last two GGBO entries from me were not enough. I wanted to do something that is both absolutely unique, but also something that almost any guitarist in the world would look at and say, oh, I want that. If you watch the main channel, I took delivery of a load of incredibly beautiful swamp cowrie from New Zealand, and I'm going to be doing a custom build or 2 or 3 for the customer who owns that wood. And the first one is going to be inspired by the Fender Jaguar, actually, sorry, Acoustasonic. I really like it. What do you think? Not the whole Acoustasonic bit, not the inlaid top, and also not the cutaways, but this is where I am currently leaning, or at the very least something based on this. Now, an alternative, as suggested earlier, would potentially be a Paul Reed Smith style. The reason I quite like this is you've got a fairly round shape, or a Les Paul actually. What I don't like about it is that I do this sort of guitar on a semi-regular basis. It's not something that is unique, it's something that you've seen me do quite a lot. Let's have a look at my kit, shall we? This is a Crimson Guitars uncut kit. There are any number of companies making kit guitars where you can buy a Telecaster or a Strat or a Les Paul or something like that, and you can put it together at home. You don't need many tools, you don't need particular skills in fretwork often, although sometimes depends on how good the kit is. I decided that the absolute best way to teach would be to go halfway between a kit guitar and a full-on build. Hence something that is like this, where we have done the neck pocket. We've got everything fitted absolutely perfectly. Your neck is carved or uncarved if you prefer. We've got the frets in, or at least the slots done. And then you can take that and customize it to create whatever you want. I almost just want to draw straight onto the body. So I need to work out where the end of that is. Now the pickups that I have for this are also quite special. That's the sound of me concentrating. There you go. Isn't that perfect? There's just something so timeless about this. I'm not a particular fan of just how tight that curve is in general. Personally, I would change it just a little bit. Even adding 1/2 centimeter to a guitar makes a huge difference. So this is where we're at. Now, I don't need 90% of this material. I don't necessarily want 90% of this material. Now, in my previous GGBO incarnations, previous GGBO instruments that I've built, I have cut away a lot of material. And I'm going to do it again this time. That's the basic idea. Now the neck is pretty much there. I'm not going to need to change anything about it. I'm not going, well, apart from the headstock, obviously, but let's get down to brass tacks, shall we? Given a basic shape, given the fact that this is not a custom shape, I'm going to have to look elsewhere to express the watchmaking stuff. So you've got your crystal on the front, the beautiful 3D applied numerals in solid glow-in-the-dark material, and this particular watch is made out of bronze. It's a limited edition, and the back and the case. And I've often thought that it would be so cool to build a guitar where you've got the same sort of construction technique. So you've essentially got a body, and everything bolts into that section. We're looking here at a watch that has a sapphire crystal glass front. It's transparent. You're supposed to see through these things. And there have been plexiglass guitars made left, right, and center since acrylic was something that was available. And you know my antipathy towards resin guitars and the like, to a certain extent. But this guitar has to be transparent. A lot of watches have a skeletonized movement, which is part of the beauty of it. Removing as much material as possible makes the watch interesting. Removing as much material from a guitar as possible does the same thing. Most of us like lightweight guitars. Most of us like seeing what's going inside things. And that is the plan here. And that means I need to make this out of glass. Now, Morningstar guitars, I am not. Or acrylic. And I'm actually wanting to use sheet acrylic. So I'm not going to be pouring resin. I'm not going to be messing around with all of that. Been there, done that. I really did like my Bogo guitar. I want the top and the back of this guitar to be see-through, 8mm thick, I suppose, sheet acrylic. So here's our body. I don't want curves, although you do get curved bezels quite a lot. I really like the angles that you've got on the bezel of this Vertex. So I want to have, and I've done this as standard on quite a few of my guitars over the years, nice hard bevels on the edges. Now, I also want to have an 8mm top set into the body. So let's say that our body is, for the purposes of strength, it's quite important that we have a relatively chunky section of wall, specifically in the areas where you've got your grain going like that, and you've got a thin piece here. That there is very delicate, and even more so at the strap button. If you have a thin piece of wood here, and it's all end grain like that, or short grain like that, that when you drop your guitar just a little bit heavier on the strap button, that strap button will just blow straight through into the body, and that will suck. And I know it sucks because it's happened to me in the past. The frame, the bezel, the body of this watch guitar is going to have to be fairly substantial in order to stop that happening. And I'm saying about 15 to 20mm thick. The next thing you'll see is that your crystal on the watch here is also raised up above the bezel. And I want to do that on the guitar as well. So we're going to have a recess here. We'll say that's 15 to 20mm. We'll have our recess into which the acrylic insert is sitting. And that is too long, Ben. Come on, plan ahead. What do you think? I hope you like it. Now with 8mm thick acrylic, the only worry that I've got is the strength of the bridge itself. I'm seriously considering customizing or making some custom hardware for this. At the very least, I'm going to be making custom knobs. Under the bridge itself, I am potentially going to have to put a block of some sort, much in the same way as you've got with a violin, potentially a couple of sound posts connecting the back and the top under the bridge to just solidify the whole thing. We've got our transparent basic plan for the body. Essentially, I'm not going to need very much in the way of comfort cars. We've got a couple of bevels on here, and it's going to be very comfortable on your arm. It should be strong enough, even with the cross grain. All we have to worry about is how are we going to affix these things and make them all work. The option that I have chosen is to actually use bolts going through from the front to the back entirely. But what that actually means is that I'll need to make that a little bit more substantial. So here's your bolt. Here's your other bolt. These have various names. So essentially you've got one side which is a threaded section, the other side is hollow and takes that bolt, and they go together and hold it together. I know them as sex bolts. Let me know what else you call them. Having those all the way around the outside of the guitar will be very interesting. You don't need to have back plates. You don't need to have access plates. It's going to be a bit of a schlep, shall we say, to gain access to electronics, absolutely. But if you need to look in there, if you need to take the electronics apart, then you just take the whole back off. Even if it is, say, 12 bolts. 12 bolts could be good. I'm going to have to write that down. That might work. Maybe 24. Even if it's 24 bolts holding the thing together, it's not going to take that much work to take the whole back plate off and service the guitar inside. And let's be real, you don't actually have to spend all that much time in the life of a guitar fixing the electronics, especially if it's done well in the beginning. And I sincerely hope that that will be the case here. We've got our body construction method. We know how it's going to be held together, i.e. with zero glue. The neck itself is going to be bolted into the body with bolts that at least look the same, and which will, I must say right now, be intensely well polished. What we have not yet covered, well, there's several questions that come to mind. The first one is shielding. I am not currently planning on shielding this guitar at all. I'm wondering what that's going to be like. I do like the idea of making the top and back out of leaded glass. I have no idea if that would actually act as a Faraday cage in any way. I don't think it actually would, but well, that could be quite cool. But yeah, as it stands, I'm not going to shield it. What I am going to do, however, is every single component internally. The pickups are humbuckers, and they've got a metal cover and a metal plate on the back. The wires are all going to be metal braided wires going into potentiometers, and every single potentiometer in this build is going to be intensely highly polished. I'm going to probably actually have to take the pots apart in order to go crazy with them. So this is machine turning that I did on the side of this Guangsheng or Luban low angle plane because, you know, why not? I like the look. This is something, again, it's watch inspired, although I've seen this pattern on, as standard from the factory, some antique Norris hand planes, so it's not entirely new to plane making. And every single thing that you see inside this guitar is going to be stunning and beautiful. And this is where it's going to get expensive and time consuming, and for me just rabbit holey, shall we say. What I'm hoping to do in this build is take the case off and either actually probably make a custom case for the inside of the pot. So the whole thing is going to be covered. The whole thing's going to be incredibly attractive. My plan is to have the applied numerals like on the Vertex watches. It's one of their trademarks. And those will be applied to, I hope, the top of the guitar around the potentiometer. It's going to be spread out a lot further. Normally on a guitar it'll be on the knob itself. I think this is going to be a relatively difficult to achieve bit of the build, but should be absolutely worth it. On the Jaguar we've got a 5-way switch here. I think we're going to have to go rotary. I think that doesn't really fit with the whole feel of a watch-inspired build. Watches, there's pivot points, there's all sorts of things moving and rotating and all that jazz. And the pivot points on which the axles are rotating are made out of man-made rubies, essentially. It's basically red-tinted sapphire crystal. And there's very little friction, and they're tiny little rubies. I hadn't actually considered putting any of those in the guitar, but maybe I can build some into the potentiometers. The other thing that I want to do on the control knobs is, instead of holding them in with a nut and washer like this, I'm seriously considering having potentially a washer underneath that locks it in place so it lines up properly, but actually cutting a thread into the Lexan or polycarbonate or acrylic top so that you don't have to have a nut holding it in from the top. Probably overkill, but it's something that I've done in the past that I quite like. The only issue is that you then have to, if you want those the lugs to line up with anything else, which I do, it doesn't work out quite as nice. Lisa's just suggested washers that look like gears. I think that what we could potentially do is make custom nuts to lock the pots in place, and the output jack, etc., and even the tuners. And the shape of that could have gear pinions cut out of them, and instead of a standard socket set or spanner, you've got a custom tool that fits in the gaps. And in fact, that would work somewhat similar to the locking system that holds the case back in on this watch. Onto the pickups. We raised via raffle and super chats, we raised about £15,000 to donate to the British Red Cross Ukraine DEC appeal. For that build, House of Tone Pickups donated a set of pickups. I asked for a nickel finish on them in order to match the Goto hardware that I thought would match, and in the end it didn't. So what ended up happening was that Mark Jennings, who's currently watching this stream, he had the exact same pickups but in bright chrome, which worked out better. And he donated those pickups for the build. I've still got the original House of Tone pickups in their incredible box, and that is what I'm going to be using on this build, which is also for a good cause. Absolutely love House of Tone and what they do. So I'm telling you, Matt is an absolute genius. These are his Tronbuckers. He's an absolute genius. 4.75K, 4.4K. An absolute genius where it comes to pickup making, but also he just knows so much more about them than anybody else I've ever met. And I've met many pickup makers. Now, this is all going to be on display. That's normally hidden, and that's fine. But from the point of view of this build, I'm going to have to do something, and I'm going to have to make a custom back plate to go on the back of the pickup as well, to hide things and make them as pretty as possible. The pickups actually helped guide the flow of this build for me. These pickups work very well on hollow-bodied instruments and have got a particular tone and sound. And it got me thinking about whether I wanted to make this hollow body or how I was going to go about that. And that made me think again about this three-part construction method and pushed me into making a watch-inspired build. So thank you, Matt. Thank you, House of Tone. Control knob. So what we're talking about is something fairly similar to what we've got here, but not quite. We want a bevel to match everything else. Oops. The bevel will be nice and shiny, and then I want straight knurling. But that's a standard sized pot. I want a wider, let's actually try and do this at full scale. I really like the wide and low knobs that you can buy from Schaller. So same thing, nice and shiny. Hell, we might even have bevels on both sides, which means I'm going to need to buy the right knurling tool for my engineer's lathe here. I'm getting excited. Are you getting excited? So this is our fairly standard tuner here. Instead of this button, which is very organic and curvy and boring, we're going to have, as was suggested by one of our viewers in the live stream, we're going to do something slightly different. So let's just draw that around. So there we go. We're going to add some sort of a knurled tuning system. And you got your nice shiny bevels and maybe a straight knurl or maybe a crosshatch. What that means is we've got yet another customization. In watchmaking and in anything, it's the tiny details, it's the small things that you then sit down and put hours and hours of thought into that make or break the build. It's, as I've said many hundreds of times, it's the last 5% of work that you put in that knocks people's socks off. And that is what we're after with this guitar. Custom bolts, custom washers, customized pickups, fairly standard looking guitar shape. And I am absolutely okay with that. I'm undecided on this one factor. I was thinking about using a straight knurl pattern all the way around, like a Breguet. I think that's, yeah, Breguet do that a lot. There have been a couple of ideas during this stream that have put me off that. And I might end up just taking the wood and doing a solid silver or bronze paint finish and high gloss lacquer. Potentially have the whole thing done internally. I think that would probably be best. So as it stands, that's where I am sitting. As it stands, that's where I'm sitting. Ben, 2022. Headstock shape, we can leave that till later. Output jack. Let us have a look at the hardware that was supplied with this kit from Crimson Guitars. So D'Addario strings, some standard Wilkinson humbuckers, which I will not be using on this build. There's the potentiometers that I'm going to be absolutely customizing the hell out of. What bridge do we have? I might use these saddles. I think I'm going to make a custom plate. Standard plastic surrounds. Oh, tuners. Actually, ooh, I like these. I don't know what brand these are, but I really like the circular motif there on that locking nut. And that's also knurled rather nicely. I think that in combination with custom knurled key area is going to be perfect. And then there's just various bits and pieces. There's a standard 3-way toggle, and I assume that's, yeah, control knobs, etc. I was hoping to use a set of these on this build, but it's actually not going to be necessary, which is sad. Check this out. This is something that I've been pushing for rather a long time. A timber pickup surround it's a beautiful thing, but in exactly the same way that I was talking about the short grain on the guitar body, and that being a weak point, you've got the same issue here. You've got long grain going down, but these areas where the screws are short grain, and when you put your screw in, it splits. So what we've done is we've inlaid material going with grain going the other way. So there's Ziricote with ebony inlaid, mahogany with maple. I even love the idea of having that with the inset bit on the top of the guitar going around a pickup. I think that is so attractive. So these are now actually available on the Crimson Guitars website. Yeah, isn't that cool? Tell me that's cool. Yeah, I'm really happy with that. There you go. Okay. Anyway, sorry, thank you for indulging me. I would absolutely love to chrome plate the body of this guitar. Chrome plating wood is an absolute nightmare. You essentially have to finish it to perfection. You have to have a substrate that's absolutely flat and stunning and spot on. So you go through everything that you would normally do with undercoat, and then you buff it down, and then high gloss that you build up, and then you buff that to final finish. That final high gloss that is perfectly flat has to be something like our shielding paint. However, it would be very cool to chrome plate the body. We don't have the time, so if I'm going to be doing it silver, then it's going to be sprayed. But it would be so cool, wouldn't it? Matt Toman asks if it'll go TikTok. I had seriously considered putting in some sort of a variable metronome mechanism into the guitar, so that you just set that going and you've just got a metronome ticking away that would be picked up by the pickups and everything. As an inbuilt guitar effect, I think that actually could be quite cool. But yeah, no. Thinking about this bridge, I've been on the channel looking at complex, complicated, overcomplicated, multi-part bridges. Recently there was the Washburn bridge made by a company called Answer, and it's the Wonder Bar bridge. I think that had more than 300 parts, one of our viewers counted. Now the temptation is for me to completely redesign a guitar bridge from the ground up, based around some sort of a gearing system. And I just can't justify doing that, when the reality is that a simple bent piece of metal does everything that we need. With that in mind, I am tempted to customize the bridge. I'm tempted to use these saddles and make a custom base plate. I'm going to leave that for now. Or am I? I really am in danger of utterly scuppering myself here. Here's your guitar body. And we've got our bevels and our acrylic and all that. So there's your tailpiece, and it's in four pieces actually, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's going all the way through the body and being locked in place, and that's solidifying the instrument massively. What I initially had in mind was actually even cooler, and that's literally just a circle. So you've got your body, and then you've just got a circle that literally goes through the entire thing. Maybe I could still do that. And that's where the strings go. You could still chop that there and still have it. So maybe that's something that I could do. Relatively simple and straightforward. And then the same thing here, I would need to have a taller system. You don't necessarily need a custom bridge at that point. You could literally just use a standard Tune-o-matic, or we're talking just a jazz sort of wooden pickup with a pickup. Now in the past I've actually made a custom carved aluminium bridge. From the top looked like that, and then you just slid it around on the body. It feels a little bit imprecise for what we're talking about here. I think that I would like to have something with all the fine adjustment that you would want on a modern electric guitar bridge. Having visible screws and things is not a bad idea on a watch-inspired build. This is my working idea, actually. I'm going to get rid of this bridge entirely. I'm going to find a Tune-o-matic style bridge that works with this and make a completely custom tailpiece. Yeah. At this point, we know roughly what the guitar is going to look like. You all know me 100%, and these things are likely to change during implementation. No battle survives first contact with the enemy, and I am my own worst enemy. So the second my tools hit material, things are going to change. But I hope that this has titillated and interested you, and that you are going to be following along with this build. Don't forget that this guitar will be available. Somebody will be winning this guitar. The raffle money will be donated entirely to GGBO. And yeah, I'm supremely excited about it. So click like, subscribe, and stay cool, and wish me luck. There's a lot of guitar here. I'm so looking forward to using some power tools and routing through some polycarbonate and using my Myford engineer's lathe and customizing some metal and stuff. It's gonna be fun. I am already running out of time, so I'll say goodbye. Goodbye. Keep cool. I'll see you soon. I'm insane. I'm absolutely insane.